Back.
Yes, sir. Mic check, mic check, mic check. Man, welcome back to Kicking the Real podcast. I am your host, Andy Diosa. I'm sorry, it's been a while. I apologize for that. Off of the top of the show, it's probably looking different if you're on YouTube. I don't know what's going on here. My graphics aren't up. My intro was a little short, but it's all right. We're here. We're gonna make the best out of it because that's what we do. I'm super excited to bring in my friend to the show today. When I started the podcast, I thought of potential guests, and this was one that was at the top of the list for many reasons. So, Max Bretos, thanks for coming through the kick with me, brother. How you doing?
That's right. That wasn't a very good excuse, Andy. I mean, you got kind of glossed over a couple things there. But great to be on here. Congratulations on the new gig and the bringing back the pod.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, brother. Yeah, it's exciting to do this as a side project.
The dog wanted to say,
Oh,
he's pawing at me.
yes, we appreciate all the guests there. No, it's exciting to do this for sure. Obviously, being in the MLS spaces is a lot of fun, and Max and I have luckily run into each other a lot of different times. I will start with a quick story. Hopefully, it's a quick story to kind of like preface this.
Uh-oh.
Max and I worked together at ESPN in Bristol, Connecticut headquarters for a few years. And I will say this: a lot of times I would run into Max. It would always, I think, the statute of limitations of this has expired, but it'd always be like, "Hey, man, like you should go somewhere. Like, spending time in Bristol in your prime 20s is not the greatest place to be." And long story short, Max always said like, "Hey, man, like you should like try like check out California and all this." And mind you, I never had any ties to California. I really never even had been to California, and this all comes full circle because it's a good way to lead into the podcast, honestly. When right before I was going to move to LA, I came out to LA 2018 just for like a week for no reason at all. Like literally didn't even have many plans. And I was like, I'm gonna go to LAFC game. Obviously was paying attention to the team. Big Edward Atuesta fan from having seen him play in Colombia for Medellin. So I go to LAFC game, and that's back in the YouTube TV days where Max is doing pregame shows in the concourse and all of this fun stuff. So I'm from a distance, like, "Hey, Max," and he's like looking at me like, "What the hell are you doing here?" Whatever, that happens. Then fast forward, I moved to LA. I get into the writing scene with Yahoo Sports. One of my first assignments was going to LAFC home opener the following season, and so be it. Max is one of the first people I run into in the press box. We have a big conversation there. Blah 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 continues. But I say that because my first like big story that I wrote was on Edward Atuesta, and that was something that I purposely did because I honestly wanted to speak to him on a personal level, but also bring it all together. And Max and our good friend Vince LaRosa, who were doing the Inside LAFC pod at that time, it was like almost like a welcoming to like, here. Max kind of talked about the story on the podcast. Vince talked about the story on the podcast. That opened up a lot of doors and just opened up the fan base, LAFC and fan base that has now become a lot of people around MLS. So I say all that to say I appreciate Max. He knows this. I've told him this all the time, but it's a cool way for the listeners to kind of bring this all together and see like Max is a well-known person in the soccer world, the voice of LAFC and all that. But it all comes together and it's a beautiful thing to see. So Max, here in front of everybody that's listening and watching, thank you, man.
Wow, that's very nice to hear. A lot to unpack, Andy. It struck me as a guy who had a California vibe about you, and certainly is. And I was actually talking to my wife today because I'm thinking about sitting in that newsroom at ESPN. This weekend is the Boston Marathon, right? And when you're in that, you always remember. Who could always forget when the terrorist attacked, and there was a big thing at the newsroom. I always remember that weekend clearly, but I also remember it because it means you don't think about this weekend out in California. You think about it out in Connecticut because it means spring is here and hopefully the cold winter is behind us, and it always drifted into April, right?
Yep.
I mean, it was so this idea that this winter's over in February. So I miss that a little bit. I miss plowing snow and layering up and you name it. But and also when you mentioned that about LAFC, it's crazy because that was it's so much time has gone by already where you look back and say, hey, we did this stuff on the concourse, and I was like, oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
It is really crazy, and we'll definitely get into LAFC and a lot of cool things MLS. I want to start how I start with most of my guests and just ask the one question is, what introduced you to soccer? It doesn't matter at like what age, or was it a certain team, a player, or a relative? Because I think that those stories are very unique to see how people's origins in the sport got started.
Well, I'm gonna have that okay boomer moment, I suppose.
Let's go.
When you hear about how I did it. I remember when I was a kid, pretty young, not that young. But we were in Mexico, and the World Cup was going on in '86. And I didn't really know anything about soccer, but I remember it was like this Maradona craze, and he was everywhere. And so I remember just not going to the game, but watching a couple on TV. And I was like, this is interesting. It was all mysterious to me. And then the 1990 World Cup, where you started watching it a lot more, and obviously in Spanish. I mean, it was so hard to find in English. I think they showed some of the games on there. And then the 94 World Cup is where it really picked up. But the 90 World Cup, I remember I was in high school. The cat's out of the bag now with my age. And there was like a bunch of Latinos would get together because they were like, hey, man, we're going to go to Professor whatever classroom doing lunch break to go watch the games from the World Cup. And I remember the first game, which was Argentina-Cameroon. And we're all in there. We're all going crazy. And people are going outside. What's going on in there? But it was like 20 kids that wanted to watch the soccer. This teacher said, come to my room. I'm going to put the games on and you can watch it. We missed a little class, but I remember it so vividly. And seeing that game, Cameroon won, and Argentina were the champs. They would come back and get to the final. But that was it. Those World Cup viewings. And, that was like, just hearing in Spanish, and that you kind of got the idea when you see these guys broadcast, you go, that's what I would like to do. I don't know where they're offering jobs. You didn't hear English broadcasters doing soccer. It's like 2 of them. And then that it felt like an impossible dream. I was like, I'd do it. Now you have soccer broadcasters everywhere. But then in the States, there must have been like 3.
Yeah, definitely.
So that was the World Cup experience, which I'm sure a lot of people would share. That was mine for sure. And then by 94 and 98, it was boom, all in.
It's amazing. It's amazing to see, and we'll touch on this later on in the show. But it's just amazing to see how the growth of all that has.
It's insane.
So far. But it is.
Oh, Andy, I did on my podcast, the Soccer OG, shameless plug. I had the executive producer and Bobby McMahon from the Fox Soccer Channel days, and even that's 98, and they had all the leagues on one channel because no one was paying broadcast fees. Mm-hmm. Now it's $1 billion to get the Spanish league. It's $4 billion to get the English league.
It's insane.
That was not long ago, man. It's gone.
Yeah, and it's to that point is having somebody like Max who has really been around and has caused some incredible moments in the game.
Making me feel old, man.
Oh, but it's an admiration, because you also have to realize, like, I remember we were in San Jose, what was it, 2 years ago now, for MLS Media Day, right before the Apple MLS Season Pass thing launched. And I still vividly remember one of the quotes you said was to know how far you've come is to know the history of like the actual league. And you're like, I'm here as as a broadcaster, as a voice on this Apple TV platform, but I'm also here as an historian of MLS particularly, and seeing that transition trajectory that has been on is pretty awesome. So kudos to Max for sure, man. One of the best doing it, and we always love hearing Max's calls. And if you go on YouTube and search his name, I'm sure you can find some epic calls. And we could sit here and talk history. We'll be here till tomorrow if we do that. But
you can also type in "You Suck Bretos" and you'll get some interesting stuff.
I love it. There's nothing.
It's been a rallying cry over the years.
Max is fresh off of calling LAFC Portland for Apple TV's MLS Season Pass this past weekend out in Providence Park. A very interesting game. It was the first one of the match day. A very interesting game for a lot of different reasons. You have the storyline of Maxime Crepeau facing his former team, and the video of him going to the LAFC supporters, the traveling supporters before the game, I thought was just amazing. It speaks volumes to the human and the person that Max is, and anybody that's spent some time, even talked to him, know that. But just want to know your thoughts on the game. Like I said, a very interesting draw up there. It's always, I guess, fiery when it comes to those two teams. It seems like one of those rivalries that is naturally grown. But what are your takeaways?
You nailed it. That was what I was going to say. Naturally grown rivalry. And by the way, I don't know if you guys saw it, but our national anthem, and I know the name of this person now is called the Uni Piper, was sung by a guy in a Darth Vader helmet, and he wore a kilt, and he was riding. Again, it's crazy to explain this. Unicycle, and he played the national anthem on the trumpet. People were going crazy. What's going on? They're like, where's that sound coming from? Because he wasn't in the middle. He was on the concourse on the far side. But yeah, that's what I really love. LAFC Galaxy, we knew it was going to be a big rivalry from the beginning, but LAFC Portland was built on matches and personalities, and they don't like each other. I mean, it's real. And so many LAFC supporters as they did this past week and go to Portland for that very reason. Look, Portland's a great city, but it's not the sexiest port of call in MLS for supporters to come, yet they go there because they know the game is the big piece of this road trip. And these supporters are amazing because they're spending their hard-earned money to travel and go for the club. And that's great for the bottom line of MLS. You know, the people are engaged like that. So just to see that, and then it's very healthy. I think, by the way, there's been a breakthrough with the Galaxy game and the Portland. I think the rivalry's become a little healthier. I mean, you can still have fans going at it, but I don't think it gets too petty or it gets, a little, unpleasant where we had some situations. I think it was they get it. And I think Portland as well. They don't have to like each other, but they don't have to do anything crazy.
Yeah.
And I think it's gone down. That's a credit to the supporters at large and those folks that are work around supporting those supporters with what they do on the day-to-day, get them from point A to point B, etc. But the game it's two teams that haven't figured it out yet, but when or if they do, they're going to be really good. And I think LAFC will get there. I think Portland, because you just look at all the players, these are really, Portland's got Jonathan Rodriguez, who I did discover does not want to be referred to as Cabecita. I had a whole story about that, and I will respect that. So it's Jonathan Rodriguez, and then they have Evander, and then they have some really nice Mosquera. It'd be really good, but individually and collectively, they haven't figured it out yet. LAFC, I think, is kind of a little further along, but they still have a ton of good talent. They just got to make sure it comes all together. And, guys like Denny Bouanga needs to get on track, and I think we expect that to happen. But I'm tempted to think these two teams will be in a good position by season's end. I hope so, because they're fun to watch, and they got a lot of game winners and etc. And it was just an early season. It's a shame because they're playing again in 2 weeks, and then that's it. Maybe they'll meet down the road. And Portland hasn't made the playoffs the last 2 years, so hopefully it goes well. And Maxime Crépeau. I was just we were on the street and we saw it happen, and it was such a beautiful, tender moment. Yeah. And look, the thing about Maxime Crépeau, any LAFC fan will tell you, this guy put his body on the line, put his livelihood on the line, is to make money, to make that play. Broke his leg and kept him out for a year. The ultimate sacrifice. So I don't know what else to say about that. It's remarkable.
A legend, definitely a LAFC fan favorite, no doubt about it. And I think seeing Max in his time that he was rehabbing and how much he was still around the team and still wanted to be, present while LAFC was going through that following season was definitely telling. And I agree with the assessment of the game. I think it's almost like two different teams where LAFC had the system is there, and they just haven't been able to kind of, like you said, fall into place and have the pieces fall into place. And then for Portland, the system they're building, because it's new for Phil Neville, but they have the pieces. Like you mentioned, the individual quality they have, all really good players. There was a run that Anthony made, like just
I forgot to mention
this guy. Nobody's about to stop him. Like, so they have a really talented roster individually. And once I think they figure that out with exactly what Phil Neville was trying to do there, I think they're going to be a pretty dangerous team in the West for sure. Definitely agree with that. Now, the season, it's still new, and MLS is fun because every week is very different. It's up and down, and one result here, one result there. But there's definitely been some surprises, and I think there's a few teams that stand out right away. But I want to hear what your two surprises are so far. One being surprising for the positive, maybe a team that you didn't expect to be as good as they gotten off to the start, and maybe one negative that you had higher expectations for that haven't gotten off to flying stars, because I definitely have a few myself, and we'll see if we agree.
So for the surprising start, I do want to mention Inter Miami, because I think they're doing better than I thought they were. I thought obviously not coming off the Monterrey loss is disappointing, but in MLS play, they've done well. Luis Suarez has done better, because you're sitting there waiting for it to break down, and it might, but they've been really good, and they've won some. I look at teams winning on the road. I think that's the best way to kind of look at where they are along. That's why LAFC needs to kind of get going in that department. But Inter Miami would be my number 2 choice. I think most people would agree it's got to be the Galaxy, and they've had 5 of their first 8 away, and they're winning in tough places like they did against Vancouver. And I thought they would be better, but for it to happen so quickly is a testament to what they're doing there. And look, I went last night. on Sunday night to see the LAFC 2, and they played the Ventura County Galaxy LA2 team called Ventura County Football Club, and they were unbeaten before LAFC beat them. So even there, the young players are coming along. So the Galaxy have fixed things up quickly. We'll see. I think there's going to be some bumps along the way, but Pooch is improving. Then you have even as well as he played last year. He's just one of probably the scariest player to go up against because he can do some crazy stuff. And then the Peck and Pansel have both settled in really nicely. Joveljic is free and scoring goals, and it's they have some things to work on. You'd like to see them maybe get a little better on defense. Jalen Neal, I think, will help when he gets back, and he should be back soon. But I didn't think they would be as good as they were at this early stage, and they look like they have some staying power. Do I say my least? Do I go with the bad one? Because I don't know, man. To me, it's a little harder to do that one because there's so many the teams you want to mention. I wanted to mention FC Dallas, but they've just been decimated with injuries, and San Jose is hard to put a finger on, but they've been really bad. And but Dallas have scored 6 goals, not good.
Yeah,
and then New England's the other one, and they have 1 win, but they've also gone through a lot coming off the Bruce Arena thing. So I think all 3 will get better. And this is MLS. I honestly I wish we had a lot of teams at the bottom. The teams could get better off and score points, but it doesn't really work that way. So there's not really bad teams, but those 3 teams have been pretty poor. San Jose looks like they might have a really rough go.
Yep.
But they've all. I would put, if I had to pick one, I think I forgive Dallas. I'd say New England because that CONCACAF Champions Cup exit. Whew.
Yeah, that was rough. That was rough. And it's interesting because, like, once again, to the Phil Neville point, like when you have a new coach, the systems obviously have to change and things have to change. But when you have similar personnel, it's kind of hard to fall off that easy. And seemingly the Revs, whatever attention they put into CONCACAF and MLS didn't translate too much. But like you mentioned, there is a long way to go. The Galaxy is a great shot, obviously. And I think one thing I love hearing Greg Vanney talk about is like he looked at the schedule in the beginning of the season and was like, oh, this is going to be really hard. Like he admitted that. And they've gotten through a pretty tough stretch being able to get these results. And like you said, the newcomers have done a great job. Obviously, Will Kuntz going there, who you're familiar with, is doing wonders for that front office. So I definitely agree with that. For me, my surprising team would be Nashville, man. It's just something like there's something to be said about the style they play under Gary Smith, and it's been that way, but there's no spark there anymore. And I think that they've almost exceeded their complaint limit where like Hani Mukhtar every offseason is like, we need to change a little bit. We need to change a little bit. And it just hasn't. And now it's like you're thinking about a team that it's not the most, they haven't been the most exciting to watch, but they have been dangerous because Mukhtar has been MVP caliber for the past however seasons. And they've gotten it done. They've been okay. They've gotten to the playoffs, but that whole we're just going to be a great defensive team and that's that. It's just nothing is working for them right now. And I think that falls back on Gary Smith. So that's one for me. And then obviously the obvious, the Revs, like you mentioned, the San Jose, the Texas teams are pretty much all down bad. But Orlando, because I feel like Orlando was the one that got the shout in the offseason, like they might be Supporters Shield contenders. And right now, I don't know what's going on. Maybe this past weekend, Sparks.
I was going to say Orlando, but I was motivated by their victory over the weekend. Maybe they felt like they're on their way.
I think, and like you mentioned, I think a lot of these teams will for sure get better. Like it's hard to get worse and start a season so bad and get worse. There's some glaring issues obviously in San Jose, but when you talk about the Revs, when you talk about Orlando, you do expect them to get better. So I definitely agree with that. And that's the fun thing about MLS. Like we mentioned, things happen so quickly in this league. 1 or 2 weekends could change a lot of things in the standings and in people's minds. So that's interesting, as well as the CONCACAF. Like you mentioned, CONCACAF is always the conversation of like how much the teams put into it. And luckily MLS got Seattle a few years ago. So that kind of like checks off the one thing, but this conversation is never going to go away, Max. It's kind of annoying sometimes when they talk about the differences between the leagues and whatnot, but it's down to Columbus now. And obviously Miami wanted to win this tournament. They were unfortunate to not have Messi in that first tie, but regardless, they go to that second leg and just get embarrassed with, their first squad. And that just speaks to the power that some of these Mexican teams have, specifically the Monterrey's, Club America, who just made light work of the Revs. But is there a role there for Columbus? I mean, they are the defending champs. It's a very well coached team, a talented team. Is there a role there for Columbus? And what do you make of this? I guess this ongoing back and forth about CONCACAF and MLS and League MX.
I think it's there's a bit of an, I don't know how the right way to say it, but it was a little excessive, and I think people want to poo-poo MLS in this CONCACAF thing because after the first legs, everyone's like, "Oh yeah," the Mexican media was doing it, and the American media, people love to take jabs. I go, "Wait a minute, we haven't even played the second legs yet," and sure enough, Columbus got through. Columbus can win this, and they're a bad matchup for Monterrey. I think, or it's a good matchup for them. That and then whatever happens in the final, Copa America look amazing. So Pachuca look really good.
Sure.
But Columbus has a shot. And I would just ask people, I go, before we just dump on MLS, I go, let's at least finish the tournament. But people it just feels like they're in haste. They want to point this out. And look, we've seen Tata Martino say it and others. And, Steve Cherundolo said it many times last year, is that they need to help those rosters build. And MLS, it's time, I think, for them to do it. I respect MLS for slow growth with regards to the salary cap because it's kept this league sustainable. And, money, if teams don't have, if you spend money, you don't hit it, then this league could be in trouble. So I think it was a good apparatus for the time, but now you have enough ambitious clubs that they should get a little help. But, anyone who wants to criticize MLS, the criticism should go for Liga MX because whether you want to acknowledge it, MLS is doing much better in CONCACAF than they did 10 years ago or 5 years ago. I mean, Seattle won it 2022, 2023. LAFC made the final. Philadelphia made a semi. Columbus is still in it here. 2020 in the COVID year, LAFC were this close to winning it. 2018, Toronto were this close. So I'm like, what do you, Liga MX should be worried because if the one thing is to increase the salary cap, which they will, they'll find ways to help these rosters, I'm sure, over the next few years. That's bad news for Liga MX because the gap is not like what it used to be. So MLS has competed much better. So it's MLS once they get that help. And by the way, Liga MX, it's not an accident that they are trying to gravitate towards MLS with the Leagues Cup and the All-Star game because they know this is their path to growth. So MLS is in the if Columbus come and win it, it would be complete. But MLS is kind of still in the catbird seat, I think, with regards to these two leagues and what's happening. And if everyone wants to say they were going, I listened to Fighto song and all the football picante, they were crushing MLS. I'm like, wait a minute. You guys crushed MLS a few years ago. It's not like that anymore. So,
yeah, it's definitely changed. The narrative is one thing and the stuff that gets the conversations going.
Ooh.
That's never
endless.
That's never.
I heard some of the MLS stuff. Alexis of the Coolins I love. He was on CBS Golazo and he said Wrexham has done more for American soccer than MLS. I was like, what? So, but I'm not surprised to hear these things. They get said a lot, and you're like, that's outrageous.
Yeah.
So, it's just. I get off on a tangent, Andy, but it's like it's constant. There was like the referee strike, the U.S. Open Cup thing. I mean, which I agree. I wish we could stay in the Open Cup, but there's just the criticisms about everything, and the outrage is. I go sometimes you got to give them a little credit. It can't be outraged about everything. So.
For sure. And I think there, like you mentioned, the important part. There's definitely strides there, and I think that's the conversation that people are not having, where it's like you're comparing a league that does not have the same amount of history, the same amount of infrastructure. Now, when you look at it that way, of course, one is going to be at an advantage because they have all this to look back at. But MLS in its phases of growing are showing those strides and having teams that are getting to the finals, having teams that are getting to semis, having a team that won it, having LAFC be there. Like everybody just looks at it as winning and losing, right? But then you don't have the real conversation about the strides that teams are making. And Columbus is a good soccer team. Now, we could say all this and they could go out and get smashed, or we could say all this and they'll go out and win and everybody will take that however they want to. But I think that's the important part. Like, these are actually good teams. Like, LAFC was a good team when they made that final. Well, they made those two finals. Seattle, I don't know why people are diminishing their run in that tournament.
Oh, because they didn't play the big heavyweights. Oh.
Exactly. You play what's in front of you. And it's like they did a really good job at it. And they had to deal with injuries as well, which is everybody's excuse all the time. Like, they had to deal with injuries in the final game. At the moment that they had some of their best players go down.
And Liga MX got some pretty good fortune here because you looked at that Messi you mentioned. The Columbus weren't with Cucho. And now the second leg, they weren't with Aiden Morris, who's, you could say, their second or third best player. So, I mean, that's obviously a situation where you kind of go back to helping the teams with the rosters so they can absorb that. But, I mean, there's some bad results, but, it hasn't been, it's been a good road for the Liga MX teams for sure.
Yeah. And it's all part of that natural growth, which is a good conversation to bring me to my next point. Like you mentioned, we're talking about Portland and LAFC fan support going on the road, and just you being around and going to all these different stadiums and seeing how much this league has grown. How cool is it, man? Like, how cool is it to see like these soccer specific stadiums go? Like, I've had the chance to go to a decent amount of different cities and watch some games there and kind of get the vibe. But how cool has it been just to see how far this league has gone from 96 to now, basically?
It's, people forget to mention this, and I'm like, there's these incredible venues, and the thing is, they don't go cheap on this. Maybe in the past they've kind of, like, all due respect to Crew Stadium, and I think the Toyota Stadium, they didn't, you have your budget for the stadium, but you look at these newer parks in St. Louis and Columbus, Cincinnati, Nashville, all the modern conveniences really built with a vision and not trying to save money, which is what the thing that MLS is cheap. Well, they're not cheap with the stadiums, and MLS isn't cheap. That's just like the narrative that's out there. But these they are really spectacular. And I think if you're a fan of these teams, you've got to do a road trip. It's amazing. These cities are great, and you can build it around going to see a game where you can go on a Saturday and then Friday, go have a nice dinner, have some drinks, what have you. Maybe explore the city. For instance, I saw the LAFC fans at Portland. Everyone was in line to get some voodoo donuts. I actually have some here. I better eat them. I got 8 of them. I don't know what I was thinking. So, but yeah, you build that around. And Portland's great. It's not a new stadium, but it's a great atmosphere. And it's they're very unique, each of them, right, for what they're doing. And that's going to continue. I mean, this Inter Miami one, the New York City one, these stadiums are a massive part of why MLS is going to be successful, because there's not really in the world this many new state-of-the-art venues from club to club. Most of these clubs play in old, sometimes dilapidated places. There's a few new ones. And I haven't even mentioned the Premier League. I mean, the Premier League's got 6-7 brand new stadiums, and then there's some old parks. I mean, I was watching Chelsea. That thing is a relic.
I was there last summer. I was literally had it on my mind. I was there last summer, and I'm like, oh, this is bad. Like, this is an old stadium that you can see it. Like, it's old.
My club plays at the Olympic Stadium, which is awful. I mean, I went through a game there, and it was like I felt like I was walking for 2 hours. I was like, this isn't what I signed up for. I'm tired. Where's the cabbies? So it's an ordeal, and it's such a big place. So I mean, I think that said, it's you would like to see the big NFL stadiums, maybe these clubs that play there move to their own parks, whether it's the Revs or Atlanta, Seattle. I think it's really important for Seattle, but that'll put pressure on them to do it because everyone's got it. So it just keeps growing, more stadiums.
Yeah, and these stadiums, they're beautiful, man. And the thing to me is like the other part that people are not talking about as well is like the training facilities. Like all of these stadiums are coming with, like you said, state of the art facilities that other people are benefiting off. Like when teams come to play international friendlies or whatever the case may be, I'm assuming Copa America as well. Like teams are able to take advantage of these training facilities, and that's where like the real deal difference is made, where you're like having players spend time and recover in these facilities. I mean, you spend, I don't know how much time at LAPC and the beautiful facility. I got to do a tour of the one in St. Louis when I went there for the opener. Amazing. It's just like there's just like top of the line stuff for these players that's a recruiting tool, man. If you're a player that's looking like I'm gonna go there, get a great experience, and get that opportunity to be part of this brand new this new thing, and I'm getting the top of the line stuff, like that's huge when it comes in terms of trying to get players to come to MLS.
Yeah. The Cincinnati one's the best, by the way. And I know I get in trouble with that. LAFC is the best when you consider the location and everything that comes with it. But just when you walk, the transformation process, when you walk into the stadium, there's nothing like TQL Stadium. To me, every time I walk in there, I feel like I just landed. I'm in Germany or the Netherlands, and you're walking there. It's just, it takes you away. It's very cool. It's like 26,000 seats. So it's a little bigger than most of the, like, BMO Stadium, which is 23,000. So it's those extra 3, you feel it. And but keep up with the Joneses, man. Everyone's gonna have to have a great stadium. I can't wait for the Miami and New York ones. Those are gonna raise the bar again.
And especially in cities like that where, you go to a place like St. Louis is a perfect example where they've obviously always had soccer, but you put that stadium there, it's a beautiful venue. And now it's like, this is stuff that people want to go to, want to be part of. And I think it's also a thing of being said, like MLS always talks about just attracting the casual fan. The casual fan is attracted through live experience, obviously, right? So you have an incentive to go to a new stadium. Coming as a New Englander, like, there's not really much incentive to go to Foxborough and watch a Revs game at Gillette. I'm sorry. Now, if they
get when I check my MLS schedule, I look. I don't go. I'm not going to Foxborough, please. And it's a long flight for someone in LA, and then it's a long drive, and I'm like, oh,
yeah.
We all cherish our time.
There's a lot to that. So it's like when you have these places like New York and Miami that are going to come on board. Like, I think Q2 in Austin is just amazing.
Oh, I can't believe I couldn't mention it. Yeah, it's unbelievable.
So it's awesome to see, and I'm glad that, because that's also growing the fan bases and trying to have people be like proud and show that pride in their cities, in their teams. And I think that's how it grows. It's not so much about obviously the players are important and the product on field is super important, but I think it's the natural atmosphere that gets people. Because I know a lot of people here in LA that are not per se huge LAFC fans or big soccer fans, but they like going to watch LAFC games because it's an experience. It's a moment. Like, from the moment you walk in there, you're like, oh, there's a lot going on and this is going to be fun. And like you mentioned, Cincinnati, I haven't been, but I've heard nothing but great things about TQL. So it's on the list.
It's good. And it's kind of downtown adjacent. So you can actually walk from Rose to downtown. And by the way, Q2 Stadium, when it was first built, I went to that neighborhood. There was nothing there. It was like, oh, they messed up here. You go there now, they have a train. They have this little downtown. It's called the Domain. Beautiful. And there's people. There's a little bar. It's hopping. And that happened in like 3 years. Yep. So like, trust me, I went there and I was like, I dreaded it because I was like, there's nothing out there because I want to be in Austin. Mm-hmm. Still want to be in Austin downtown, but that area's not bad.
No,
it's not bad at all. It's very.
I frequent Austin a lot because I have a cousin that lives there, and the Domain is now like the alternative. Like, for people that don't go downtown, they go out at the Domain. So
we should have bought some real estate, Andy.
Listen, man, my cousin has a house over there. I'm behind the run.
Back in 2018, we could have got it for a song. Hey, there's nothing here. Yeah, I'll give you $50. We'll be like millionaires.
Yeah, Matthew McConaughey's vision coming to life. Now, there's obviously this summer is great. A lot of soccer going on just in the world in general, but Copa America is coming to the States. It's exciting. As a Colombian, seeing the South American teams come here, obviously the U.S., Mexico, the CONCACAF teams being in it. But I just remember back to 2016, like how excited I was for that tournament and seeing these huge stadiums full. It's gonna be a fun competition. Obviously, like Messi being in the States playing for Miami, like there's a different turn to it. What are your thoughts on Copa America in general this summer? And obviously the U.S., because the U.S., I've had this conversation probably not too long ago, and I'm like, listen, man, like everybody looks at Copa America and thinks of like Argentina and Brazil, which if they're thinking about Brazil, maybe they haven't been paying too much attention. But like, there's always the juggernauts in South America, right? And there's tiers. Like, there's Uruguay, there's Colombia. It's a tournament. Anything can happen. But I was like, there's also something to be said about like a hungry U.S. team that is playing on home soil, that has a lot of talent, that are players that are playing around the world that could make some noise. I'm not saying the U.S. is going to come in and shock and win this tournament. It's not impossible.
Yeah, you are. That's what.
But I'm also saying that people might just be overlooking a U.S. team, and that's probably the whole Greg Berhalter fatigue that people have. But what are your thoughts on the U.S. competing in that tournament and just the tournament being here in general?
Well, the tournament is obviously you can get like a dress rehearsal for the World Cup. So I think you keep the World Cup in mind. They're going to be using these massive stadiums. I mean, it was like Venezuela, Ecuador at Las Vegas, which is 65,000. I go, if they fill that place, for Venezuela, Ecuador, I mean, all due respect to the great Venezuelan and Ecuadorian communities in the United States, but Vegas is a destination. So maybe I'll eat my words, but they're going to be playing these big venues. So you'll get that World Cup feel. And that's one of the things I hope to see, that they're going to be well attended. I don't know. I know obviously USA and Mexico and Messi and Argentina certainly will be, but you want that, in Brazil, but you want that to go over because these are big venues. Sure. So just to kind of get a feel for the World Cup and how it's going to go. And, we all talk about how to grow the sport in the United States. And the thing that's at the top of the list, which is not debatable, that will make this sport explode, is if the United States succeeds, wins a tournament, So they're not going to win the Copa America. I don't think so. Or make a semifinal. I think because it's a smaller tournament, it has to be a semifinal. And just take advantage of it. So, I mean, they're going to get through their group. Because the one thing about the U.S. and all the criticism of the national team and U.S. soccer and Greg Berhalter, the one thing you can't take away from them is they play very well when they play at home. And they're playing the Copa at home, and they're playing the World Cup at home. So if we mimic what we've seen, then they're going to have a good tournament. So I think they will do well. But that's what we need. We need, if they get knocked out in the quarters and they play, say, Brazil and lose, but playing Brazil at home, if that is the opponent, or Colombia at home, more so Colombia. But Brazil hasn't been, they've all kind of fallen off the bumper of Argentina. Mm-hmm. Brazil's been good, but not overwhelmingly good. And they have some holes there. So it's going to get one of those teams, depending who finishes first and second in those groups. And we'll see if they can do it. But that's everything else. If MLS succeeds, if there's more money invested in soccer, the one thing that's bona fide going to get this country going is success. So that's why this Copa America, and more so the World Cup, are so important. So the World Cup's going to be harder because it's 48 teams. So I don't know how you navigate. USA may have got a little screwed on that because the expanded means they have to win another game to get to wherever they want to go, quarters, semis. So that's going to be crazy.
They'll be nice and comfortable here in LA since they'll play.
Yes. And and Andy, I guess that'll benefit them because in the long tournament, you'd be like, hey, we're here at home. I can see my loved ones. Yep. I can go to Chipotle or whatever the players. They all love Chipotle. That's when I asked them. And they could do all their things that they could do in the US and get their creature comforts. And that makes a big difference, especially in the long tournament.
Yeah. And I think it's funny because we talk about MLS teams playing in football stadiums, the Seattles, the Charlottes, Atlanta, the Revs. And you see the optics of like when those stadiums are kind of empty, it does look really sad. But then when you see the optics of like Charlotte FC games and like that lower bowl is going absolutely crazy for a game against like Toronto or something, you're like, oh, there's actually something here. And I think that Copa America does a great job at bringing people out because, of course, the nationalities and all that pride of you wanting to represent your country. But, there's the soccer fans that are specifically wanting to see certain players and maybe not just Messi, and obviously we have a benefit of having a superstar here and playing on U.S. turf. So those Argentina games are always going to be sold out. But like, I really think that the support is going to be pretty good across the board. If it mimics,
I think so too.
2016, and
everyone wants to come to the U.S., right?
Exactly.
Look, Vegas is a good hook. That's why you should have had some World Cup games there.
Yeah.
Because I'm like talking to people. This is what people want to come to the United States for. They want to go Vegas. And this is pretty obvious. Miami, Orlando for Mickey Mouse, New York, LA, Vegas, and San Francisco, and national parks, which some of those cities are close by. I was at Yosemite. They were saying like 50% of their visitors are non-American. Yeah. So that's what people want to come here, and they can build it around soccer. Whether it's the Copa or the World Cup, they will come.
I agree. And I think 2016 was a pretty good showing of that. Like, I remember I went to like a Chile Bolivia game at Gillette, and I'm like, I don't know why I'm here, but it's Copa America. Like, why not? Like, sure, of course I'm here. And then
that's what I did in my first World Cup in '94, and I saw it was Belgium and Saudis. I was like, I don't care. It was in Orlando. I was like, oh, I want to watch this.
Why not? So I mean, I'm personally excited to follow Colombia around. Hopefully, like I did in 2016, and just hopefully it's just a good tournament in general to showcase, like you said, what the U.S. could offer as a host for the World Cup that's coming up, which is going to be a lot of fun, man. A lot of fun. It's all good times. Soccer's booming. And it's a perfect person to talk to.
And by the way, it's going to be booming. So people are going to make a lot of money. That's going to help soccer in these tournaments because people go, dude, our city just made $3 million. Our restaurants are crushing. I go, what's different? Well, soccer's in town. Like, oh, come back.
Yeah,
you're always welcome. We should make a little stand outside of Allegiant Stadium. Maybe sell some, arepas. I can sell some little pastelitos.
I'm with it. We'll get
some coin, Andy.
I'm actually thinking about going up to Levi Stadium because Colombia Brazil is up there. So just picturing that week, and this is a great connection here. Colombia Brazil, Levi Stadium, July 2nd, LAFC, LA Galaxy, Rose Bowl, July 4th. I'm like, this is like, it's just a beautiful thing to see, man. Like, if you can't get excited about that, you're just not a soccer fan. I'm sorry.
I gotta get to the game. I mean, I have a game on the 3rd, I believe, and then I will be at the LAFC Galaxy game off the clock on the 4th. I'll see if I fire up, and maybe I'll pop in there. I don't think I can pull it off, but maybe.
When Max is off the clock, that means he's going around signing autographs. Everybody in the stadium wants pictures with Max. It's a legend, man. It's a walking legend out there. The Soccer OG. Check out my guys' podcast, Soccer OG Max. I appreciate you for coming. I have one last question. I'll let you go. This is the most important question of the whole show, so pay attention, all right? We're in LA. Naturally, we are connoisseurs of going to taco stands, taco trucks, and all that. So I won't ask you which one is your favorite because there are many, many around the city, and I guess it depends where you are in the city. But I will ask you, what is your go-to order when you go to one of these taco trucks or taco stands? Because it's a talking point, and I think it's important for the listeners to kind of that are not here in LA to kind of hear this because this is a part of the culture here.
Wow, that's a good one. I mean, it's pretty standard for me. I'm trying to pull up this taco truck in Gardena, Chiapas taco truck. Definitely, if you're in that area, it's on. It's like an orange bowl. You could pull it Chiapas tacos because that's close to where I live, and they have like little taco that's melted in cheese. I can't remember what it's called, but I go to a couple trucks like in Koreatown or on the west side a bit. You know, there's like Leo's. I've just dropped Leo's taco, obviously, and Flamin taco.
Flamin,
dude, have you been that place?
I live down the street from it, man.
Oh my god. I go there and it's kind of off the clock that they've put the trompo away, whatever. So you don't have the visual stuff. They already have it's al pastor. That's what I get. And they have those buckets of the cilantro and there's like a spicy one. Yeah. Oh my god! I get a bag, like a 2-pound bag of it, and I bring it home and I eat it like candy. That's sometimes I'm at. Last couple of times we saw a show in Hollywood. Me and my wife, or me and a friend, we stopped there, pick up some tacos. Try to wait to eat them at home. That you never make it. Get like 4 of those.
It's over.
All the fix. Make it spicy. I have a little what do we call it? Jarritos or something. You're good.
Game over. Max knows what he's talking about.
And it costs you like $15.
It's the one thing. This is the one thing inflation has not taken from us yet. Man. Got to protect it at all costs.
It may not even be $15. It's probably less than. No, it's about that.
It's amazing. About that. It's amazing, Max. Always a pleasure, brother. Where are you this weekend for MLS?
Oh, I'm doing the LA double. I'm doing Rodolfo Landeros. I'm picking up the LAFC Red Bulls game on Saturday, and then I'm doing Galaxy San Jose Sunday. So a lot of prep, but I don't have to travel.
You get to stay home. That's amazing.
I'm very excited. I mean, this is like a rite of passage to call both teams in LA on the weekend.
I love that. Well, then I'll see you this weekend, brother.
Yes, sir. I will be there.
Max, thank you,
just
man.
Follow when I'm at Dignity Health. You can just hear the booze, and you'll know that. I'm excited to call the Galaxy games, and I call it. I mean, I'm a big fan of all the teams. You know, obviously I'm affiliated with LFC, but I like to see a good level. And the Galaxy, we need the Galaxy to be good for this league to be at top form, and that's they're heading that way.
I love that the LAFC fans won't, but I love it here as a neutral.
Well, I tell the LAFC fans, imagine LAFC Galaxy 1-2 in the West with a possible playoff appearance looming.
I was having this conversation at Apple the other day saying I don't think I've experienced a more fun MLS game, Rose Bowl aside, than that first LA Galaxy playoff game. I mean, I like everything surrounding it. I think the energy in the stadium that day, like I walked in, I think that's the earliest I've ever been to a stadium. And I was just like, this feels like massive.
Even the first meeting down there at Dignity Health, you didn't know what to expect. You walk in there and go, oh my God, it's like an FA Cup semi.
Yeah.
You see the fans, the colors everywhere, the balloon. I was like, whoa, this is amazing. So hats to the supporters. They did all of it. That is their work. That's their handiwork. That is what makes these clubs, that game, so special.
And you see how important it is to everybody involved, man. It's
oh, yeah.
It's a fun time. Max, once again, appreciate you, brother. Thanks for coming.
Thanks a lot, Andy. I'm hungry now. I'm starving.
I am too. Man, this is all the quality content you get only here, man. Everybody,
I might go to the Chiapas truck down in Gardena. It's about a 15-minute drive.
As you should. Check out my guys' podcast, the Soccer OG. Like and subscribe on YouTube. We'll have everything linked. And appreciate you guys for coming by. Hopefully, we'll get our visuals back on track for the next episode. But until then, man, peace out.